The mansion, once full of movement and quiet confidence, had fallen into an unsettling stillness the moment Victor collapsed. His children tried to stay composed, but fear settled into their voices and their footsteps. Daniel barked orders at every doctor who walked through the door, Naomi whispered frantic questions, and Lucas kept pacing as though movement alone might fix something. Yet beneath all that noise, there was a strange emptiness that everyone felt but no one wanted to acknowledge. Staff members lingered in hallways, exchanging worried glances as machines beeped helplessly behind closed doors. They murmured in low tones, "He was fine last week, what happened so suddenly?" But another whisper carried more weight, a truth everyone felt in their bones: if Elena were here, she'd know what to do. The words were soft, almost guilty, but they weren't wrong. For 23 years, Elena had been the unseen rhythm of Victor's life, the person who remembered what he forgot, noticed what others ignored, and could read his mood before he spoke. Now, when Victor needed familiarity more than anything, she was miles away caring for her parents. And with her absence, the mansion felt colder, the silence heavier, and every passing hour more uncertain. The one person who understood him wasn't there. It happened on an afternoon that should have been ordinary, the kind where Victor Halden usually reviewed paperwork or made a round of calls before dinner. But that day, something in him gave way without warning. One moment he was sitting in his leather chair, and the next, his breath turned shallow, his skin drained of color, and his body sagged as though the strength he'd carried his whole life had quietly slipped out of him. Panic spread faster than footsteps. Staff rushed toward the doorway but hesitated, unsure whether to intervene or stay out of sight. His children reacted the only way they knew how, by throwing money, urgency, and authority at the problem. Phones rang non-stop, specialists were flown in, tools were unpacked, machines clicked to life, and the once peaceful mansion transformed into a buzzing emergency ward. But the more they did, the less he responded. 20 doctors examined him, argued, tested, and retested, each one confident when they entered the room and shaken when they left it. With every failed attempt, the truth grew heavier. Despite all the expertise, all the machines, and all the noise, Victor wasn't getting better. He was slipping further away. The change in Victor wasn't temporary. It became the beginning of 5 unexpected years, years that no doctor had predicted, years his children cherished in ways they hadn't before, and years Elena filled with the same steady presence that had brought him back from the edge. She never called it healing or credit herself for anything extraordinary, she simply showed up every morning, prepared his meals the way he liked, reminded him to move his limbs gently, and talked to him about the small things that kept his mind anchored. Victor laughed again, walked short distances, and celebrated milestones he'd been expected to miss. He lived long enough to see Naomi walk down the aisle, to hold Lucas's first child, and to witness Daniel learn to loosen his grip on life. And when he eventually passed, quietly in his sleep, the house didn't fall into panic, it honored him. During the reading of his will, Elena sat in the back with her hands folded, expecting nothing more than a polite acknowledgement. But Victor had left her a cottage near the orchard, a sum of money enough to build a future, and a handwritten note thanking her for the years she gave him when time should have run out. With that gift, she opened an orphanage on the property, Halden House, filling it with the warmth and care she had once given him. And in that silent understanding shared by everyone who loved him, one truth remained: she hadn't saved a billionaire, she had saved the man behind the name. Recovery didn't happen in a sudden burst of miracles, it unfolded in small, almost fragile moments that gradually changed the entire room. As Elena continued her quiet routine, warming his hands, shifting his shoulders, speaking to him as though he were simply resting after a long day, Victor's body began to respond in ways the monitors couldn't explain. His chest rose with a little more strength each hour, as if the warmth in the room was thawing something frozen deep inside him. His fingers curled slightly, not out of reflex, but as though he was trying to hold on to the familiar presence beside him. Even the faint flicker of his eyelids carried meaning, a tiny sign that he was no longer drifting helplessly but trying, in his own slow way, to come back. The doctors watched with confusion, checking numbers that showed no real reason for improvement. But everyone else in the room could feel it, a shift, a softening, a return of something human that had been missing since the chaos began. Elena didn't celebrate or draw attention to herself. She simply continued her gentle rhythm, letting care guide what medicine had failed to do. And by the time Victor opened his eyes fully, even for a brief second, it was clear this wasn't coincidence. He was returning because someone had finally made him feel safe enough to return. Elena didn't rush, didn't panic, and didn't treat Victor like a medical case the way everyone else had been doing. She simply moved with the calm assurance of someone who had spent years learning a person's unspoken language. The first thing she did was open the curtains just enough to let a warm sliver of sunlight fall across his blanket. It wasn't dramatic, but it shifted the atmosphere instantly, softening the sterile coldness the machines had created. Then she gently adjusted his pillow and lifted his arm with slow, practiced care, moving each joint as though reminding his body it still belonged to him. The doctors watched with thinly veiled skepticism, but even they couldn't deny the familiarity in her touch. She wasn't guessing. She knew. She spoke to him too, not loudly like the doctors giving commands, but in a warm, steady tone that sounded more like home than treatment. She warmed broth to a temperature he always preferred and brought it close enough for him to sense its presence. She wiped his forehead with a warm cloth and told him softly that she was there now, that he wasn't alone in the noise. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, his body responded. His fingers twitched, his breathing shifted, and something inside him began to reach back toward life. When Elena finally stepped back into the mansion, rolling her small suitcase behind her, she expected to return to the familiar rhythm she had known for more than 2 decades. But the moment she crossed the threshold, something felt wrong. The usual warmth of the house had been replaced by tension so thick it almost stopped her in her tracks. Staff members who normally greeted her with casual smiles now stood in stiff clusters, their eyes widening as if hope itself had just walked through the door. She didn't understand their reactions at first, she simply followed the unsettling silence toward Victor's room. But when she saw him, pale, unmoving, surrounded by machines that looked more oppressive than helpful, her breath caught. She didn't see a billionaire, she saw the man whose breakfast she prepared, whose footsteps she could recognize from across the hall, whose subtle habits only she ever truly noticed. Before she could move closer, Daniel cut in sharply, insisting the best specialists were already working. Naomi echoed the sentiment, warning that Elena wasn't cleared to handle anything. It was the polite way of saying she wasn't needed. But Elena didn't argue. She stepped toward Victor with the steady familiarity that had guided her for 23 years, looked at him carefully, and understood something no one else in the room had seen. The person he trusted most was finally home.